Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, out of Voice Radio. So today, we need to take a look at a new item card. Now, I say new item card. I actually told you this item card was going to be coming. Now, I joke mostly because I can take, literally no credit for this whatsoever. My lovely anonymous Japanese source told us about a new item card that was going to be coming in the near future, and it has now been confirmed, it has been shown off. It is Rotom Bike, and it does exactly what we thought it would. Cool. What it does is it is an item card, and it ends your turn when you play it, and when you play it, you draw until you have 6 cards in your hand. Draw until you've got 6 cards in your hand, your turn ends. Cool. Now, as a quick side note, when we looked at this card before, and we do need to do a new video about it, the old video didn't have the artwork, so it's hard to find, it wasn't confirmed, and importantly, when the card came out previously, we thought it was just Bicycle. Well, it is Bicycle, but it's Rotom Bike, which means it has a different name, which means that Bicycle is a different card. It means that in the expanded format, you could play both Bicycle and Rotom Bike in your deck. But it also means that since it is Rotom Bike, not Bicycle, you cannot use the old Bicycle from, Plasma Storm, because they are different cards with different names that do different things. Although, to be honest, when they do different things like that, you can't use the old ones anyway. But the point is, they are different cards, different names, different effects. They're item cards based around bikes that let you draw cards. There are, shall we say, some glaring similarities between them, but they are still different cards when it comes down to it. So I suppose a real question becomes, do we like this? Is this something we're into? Is this something we're digging? Is this something cool? Or do we not need it? And the answer is very much it depends on the deck and it depends on the situation. So for instance, I don't think you're just going to be able to blindly put 4 of these in every deck. I think just blindly putting 4 of these in each deck will be slightly silly and somewhat of a mistake, if I'm honest with you. Just don't think it's going to work. However, there are plenty of times this is going to be really good. And the obvious one is, well, okay, let's just assume for a moment that we are going to be getting the same rule changes that we get over in Japan. So in Japan, there is a rule change coming whereby if you go first on your first turn, you are not allowed to play supporter cards. Now, the rule already says you're not allowed to attack, and this is huge. Because if you're allowed to attack on the first turn going first, obviously you can just do big damaging attacks. You can get your Reshiram and Charizard, for instance, play yourself a Welder, attach an energy and just hit for 200 with a GX attack. That would be an option. But you could also use setup attacks, something like the Victini that came around in Unified Minds that lets you search your deck for 2 basic energy cards, different types, and attach them to your Pokemon. That would work. Well, as it stands at the moment, you can't attack, but you can still use supporters, which means that you can play stuff like Welder or you can play stuff like Cynthia, but it also means that decks that can afford to play it can play stuff like Steven's Resolve that end your turn but lets you search for any free cards, but it doesn't matter that you end your turn because you're not allowed to attack anyway. You're passing at the end of your turn. You might as well pass after having searched for any free cards. Okay then. Here's the problem. We're now not going to be able to play supporter cards either. So what can we do on turn 1? And the answer is we can play item cards and we can use Pokemon abilities. So Dedenne instantly becomes like a bazillion times better because you can just play Dedenne down, discard your hand, draw 6 and off you go. Now remember that Dedenne is limited to 1 copy per turn, so you can play 4 Dedenne in your deck, and you can play as many Dedenne as you like during your turn, but the ability will only activate once. Once you've played Dedenne to the bench and used Dedenne Charge, you can play another Dedenne, but it would be like if you played it using a Nest Ball. It goes onto the bench, but you don't get the benefit of the ability. So we need other stuff. We need item draw, and the item draw we've got at the moment is meh. Now, anything we've got can be searched out with order pad on a coin flip. That's quite nice. And we've got Acrobike. Let's just look at the top 2 cards of our deck, put one in our hand and discard the other one. That's quite nice. And we do have Judge Whistle that just lets you draw a card. Does also incidentally let you grab a Judge from your discard pile and put it into your hand. But in the short, more immediate term, it just lets you draw a card. And just drawing one card is not particularly amazing until you realise that we just don't have better options, right? When we're talking about the draw, we've basically got Acrobike and Judge Whistle. They are essentially our options. That's what we can roll with. Okay. This is significantly better, but it ends your turn. So we're not talking a mid-game little boost here. We're not talking whack 4 in every speed deck. And when you're making a speed deck at the moment, you do just whack 4 Acrobike in there. I've seen decks that can find the room just whack 4 Acrobike and 4 Judge Whistle in. That is not the case here. It's amazing on turn 1 going first. It is the best thing. If you're going first, turn 1, it is the best option. The problem is, how do you get it? Like, you can't play supporters, so finding it with Green's Exploration would be amazing. Being able to go first, play Green's Exploration, find another item or trainer and this, and then play this to end your turn would be great, but you can't play or... Okay, in Japan, they're definitely not going to be able to play. Over here, I feel extremely confident that we will not be able to play it. Okay, so it's great turn 1, but we run into this awkward dichotomy. Things we've seen from way back. I mean, First Ticket would be another great example of this. First Ticket was a really fun card. If you had it in your hand to start the game, you're guaranteed to go first. But that was literally all it did. That was the only thing it ever did. Once you drew it after that, it was just a dead card in your hand. So it's like you want to play 4 of them to increase your chances of having it right away, turn 1. But you want to play 1 of it because you only ever want to use it on turn 1. And it's very hard to reconcile those two things. You want it super early, but you don't want it any other time. So do you play lots to try and get it early, or do you play few so it's not a dead card later on? And there isn't a good answer to that question. The only good answer to that question is find a good way to search it. But now you've got to find a good way to search it when you're not allowed to attack and you're not allowed to play supporter cards. And I'm like, well, how does that work? Like, seriously, how do we work this? Now, the other exception, of course, is just mill decks and stall decks. Decks where you just want to sit there and not get KO'd. So like the new Wishy-Washy from Cosmic Eclipse has got a rather gigantic 180 HP, and if it's damaged at the end of your opponent's turn, you flip a coin. If tails, you shuffle it back into your deck. The Regigigas that we had that had 180 HP, just as a basic Pokemon. It was in Crimson Invasion, it has rotated out, but it's still there and expanded. Or something like Keldeo, which can just sit there and block EXs and GXs. The kind of decks that would use Tropical Beach, except in Standard we no longer have Tropical Beach. I've told you recently about a card called Palace Book. And Palace Book is a really nice trainer card that Japan got that we never did. And basically it just lets you draw 3 cards and end your turn. This is not Palace Book, but it's not a million miles away. It's kind of like the difference between How and Lily. How lets you draw 3 cards. Lily draws until you've got 6 cards in your hand. See, it's funny because it's exactly the difference between How and Lily. And Lily's a better card. Now, to be fair, Lily does have the turn 1 draw until you've got 8 thing going on. But outside of that, this is just Lily that ends your turn rather than How that ends your turn. But as an item card, so I can play my Cynthia, or indeed my Lily, and then draw this, and then play whatever cards I want, and then play this. But it ends your turn. So if you're playing a stalling deck or a blocking deck, or even something like Wheezing maybe, where instead of attacking you just want to leave it in the active dealing damage to all of your opponent's basic Pokemon. But even then, you probably still want to use Splattering Spludge to do some damage. But the point I'm making is, if you don't want to attack at the end of your turn, this is a phenomenal card, and we've seen plenty of decks that don't. Just recently, that new Florges and Lily's Pokédoll deck has been doing quite well. In fact, it did really well at Latin American Internationals. And that's a deck that attacks extremely rarely. So maybe in a deck like that, this could be good. Because they want the early version of this. So they can find the rare candy and get Florges up. But they can also draw it in the mid to late game and just play it to draw some cards. Although as a side note, the deck does tend to play Munchlax, which has a really nice ability that on a coin flip can recover any card to the top of your deck from your discard, while also ending your turn. So any turn you play Rotom Bike, you then don't get to use Munchlax. The point is, it's a really, really good item card, but it is an extremely situational item card, so you can't just use it every turn or use it indiscriminately. You've got to think about it. But I do think it's a between 3 and 4 Wassy card. We don't give half Wassies. That would be barbaric. So I've said it's only going to be useful in some decks. Well, I'd like to know what decks you're planning on using it in, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.